You can have any woman in this town except my daughter. Clay McAllister's voice boomed so loud the saloon walls might have rattled. His hand slammed the table. Whiskey sloshed over the rim, and every eye fell silent. I sat in the shadows at the back, hat low, nursing a drink I hadn't tasted in minutes. I'd heard a lot of lies in my time on the range, but this one rang real more like a decree, a warning, the kind a man like me should have listened to. Clay stood like a mountain in front of two ranch hands, boots dusty, belt gun barely holstered. The way he said, "my daughter," stuck in the air like a barbed wire line. No crossing, no questions. Folks whispered her name like sin. Lily McAllister, hidden away after something went wrong last winter. Some said she went wild. Others said someone broke her heart. But Clay made sure no one got close enough to find out. I'd been humiliated earlier by Clay's foreman Alden. He'd thrown my saddle out of the bunkhouse and told me I ain't worth the dust on my boots. Said the ranch had no room for strays. I didn't argue. I just stared him dead in the eyes and walked away. That wasn't how I expected my first day in this town to go. But the way Clay guarded Lily, it stirred something stubborn in me. Something that wouldn't look away, even if I should have. The saloon's piano struck up again, uneasily, and the tension broke just enough for a breath. A woman leaned toward her friend, hushed. He keeps her locked away. Clay don't trust nobody. Not after that winter. What winter? I muttered into my glass. The winter she disappeared. Someone answered behind me. Old man. Gray beard. Eyes like he'd seen more than he cared to remember. She was gone 2 weeks. Clay and his boys brought her back one night. She never spoke a word after. My stomach turned. A silence you could choke on. I knew what it felt like to lose your voice to the world. Clay finished his whiskey and threw a cold glance around the room. "Don't any of you test me," he growled. "I've got eyes everywhere." He didn't see me. Not yet. But I saw him. Later, outside in the dust and dying light, I passed the bunkhouse Luke Lane. Homeless cowboy with a ripped shirt and bruised pride. I heard laughter inside men's sleigh, lapping their knees. Should have seen his face when Alden called him tumbleweed trash. I kept walking. Pride swallowed, jaw clenched. Folks loved to laugh when they thought the fight was over. "You ain't leaving town, are you?" the old man from the saloon called from his porch. "Maybe I should," I said. "Maybe you shouldn't," he replied with a knowing grin. "Some stories ain't done yet, no matter how hard one man tries to bury them." The sky went purple over the prairie. Coyotes howled like they knew something was coming. Maybe they were right. I lay down on my bedroll under the stars, and Clay's words echoed in my head, "Except my daughter." I rolled over and stared into the dark. Lily's name whispered in my mind like a ghost. Somewhere out there, behind hidden windows and locked doors, her silence waited. And I knew I wasn't leaving, not yet. Rumors travel fast in a town with too much dust and not enough truth. By morning, Lily's name was on every tongue in the general store. I walked in for coffee grounds and walked out with a head full of whispers. 2 old women stood by the jars of penny candy, talking low like Lily might hear them through the shelves. "Clay turned away 6 men last spring," one said, wrapping twine around a sack of flour. One even brought a diamond ring. "Would have been the 7th, the other replied, "but his horse threw him on the way to the ranch." Could be luck, or could be Clay's temper. I stood near the back aisle, pretending to read labels on lantern oil, but my ears were doing the work. Every story circled back to one thing: Lily had been kept behind locked doors since that winter, and no one had been allowed near her since. "She used to sing," one whispered.
Now she don't make a sound. That stuck with me, the idea of a voice trapped in silence, like someone had reached inside her and chained her to her own ribs. I knew that pain. I'd lived it once. My mind flashed back to the bunkhouse, the humiliation. Clay's foreman, Alden, had walked up while I was tightening my bedroll. "Dust," he said, kicking dirt in my direction. "Don't know what fool sent you here, but we ain't hiring strays." "Oh, I've got hands. I can work," I said, standing tall. He laughed, leaned in, and shoved my chest hard. "Maybe you ain't heard. Clay don't want outsiders. He protects his own. Now get gone before I make you regret it." I said nothing. Not then. But my jaw muscles ached from what I held back. That evening, I found myself back near the McAllister ranch. I told myself I was just passing by, but my boots slowed in the shadows near the fence line. Clay's men patrolled the yard with rifles, muttering among themselves. Lanterns flickered in the windows. And then I saw her. Just for a second, a figure in a white nightdress behind the second-floor window. Lily, her hair like spilling wildfire, her face pale in the dim light. She turned her head slowly, like she felt me there. Our eyes locked through glass and darkness. She didn't look away, and neither did I. Her gaze held something: fear, curiosity, maybe even recognition, as if she had been staring through that glass for months, waiting for someone to notice her stillness, to see past the rumors. It struck deep being seen by someone who couldn't speak. Like many of us, she carried scars no one could see. Clay had built a wall around her, but her eyes told a different story. She didn't want it. Then the curtains dropped. A loud voice boomed from inside. "Lily, get away from that window." Clay. Furious. Lights shifted in the house. Boots stomped. I stepped back into the shadows, heart pounding like I'd stolen something. As I walked away, the wind carried something faint, not a sound, but a feeling. Fear wrapped in loneliness. And I knew I wasn't just passing through this town anymore. Lily wasn't the only one trapped. Night fell heavy, and somewhere in that big house, a girl stared out through the locked doors, daring the world to see her. But the truth was, I already had. The gunshot cut through the night like lightning splitting the horizon. I was asleep in my bedroll behind the general store when it hit my ears sharp, echoing off every wall of that quiet town. My blood ran hot. It was coming from the McAllister ranch. I didn't think. I ran. Boots pounding dust, lungs burning, I leapt the fence and climbed the hill behind the barn. Shouts rose from the yard. Lanterns swung. Dogs barked. When I reached the crest, I saw a drunk ranch hand pinned to the ground by Clay's men, screaming slurred curses into the dirt. And there she was, Lily McAllister, standing on the porch, nightdress whipping in the wind, hand steady on a rifle, twice her weight. She was the one who fired. The sight froze me. She didn't cower behind her father. She was a fortress of her own. "You try that again, and next time, I won't aim high," she said, voice cold, clear as broken glass. I swear the men trembled more from her voice than her gun. Clay stomped out, red-faced, barking orders. "Drag him to the sheriff's. I want him gone by sunrise." The ranch hand barely struggled anymore. He was bruised, bloodied, but his eyes were locked on Lily, full of something twisted, a hunger, a warning. They hauled him off, and she finally lowered the gun. That's when her eyes caught mine from the porch. "Did you come running for the sound, or for me?" she asked. The world shrank to just her and me, moon overhead, dust under our boots. "Maybe both," I said, walking closer, but never stepping onto the porch. A cowboy knows the line between respect and trespass. She studied me. A flicker of something like recognition crossed her face. You're the one who watches from the fence line, the one who doesn't speak much. I speak when there's something worth saying. My voice was softer than I meant it to be. Her expression didn't change, but her eyes did. They softened just an inch. Then why are you still here, stranger? Because no one should fight alone. Because I've seen what silence does to a soul. Because someone once watched me break and pretended they didn't. But I just said, because you ain't safe here. Not really. She held my gaze long enough that I felt the weight of every night she spent staring out windows, waiting for someone to come. Lily! Clay's roar broke the spell. He strode toward us, eyes boiling suspicion. Inside, now. She didn't flinch, just turned back toward the door. But before she stepped inside, she said quietly, "My name is not his to own." Clay's eyes turned on me, cold steel. "You again," he snarled. "Didn't I warn you?" "You warned me," I said. "Didn't say I was leaving." He stepped close, fist on his belt. "Set foot on my land again, and I'll bury you under it." I didn't answer. I just glanced back toward the house, one last glimpse of her silhouette in the window. A woman behind locked doors who chose to fire her own gun. I turned and walked into the night. Behind me, the silence settled heavy. But something had changed. She wasn't just waiting anymore. And neither was I. I woke to footsteps outside my door. No voices. Just the soft crush of boots on dirt. Then silence. I sat up, gun in hand, listening. When the footsteps faded, I crept out onto the porch of the abandoned feed room I'd been using as shelter. A folded note lay at the edge of the step. No envelope, no signature. I picked it up. "Thank you. I know who you are." I stared at the words until the morning sun warmed the paper. My heartbeat slowed, but my pulse pushed hard against bone. I know who you are. That meant Lily wasn't just watching. She remembered. She saw me for more than the cowboy Clay wanted her to believe I was. The words hit deeper than I expected, like someone finally said my name without saying it at all. A bitter wind whistled in from the north, and suddenly my mind drifted back to last winter. I was riding cross-country, no destination, looking for purpose. Most men like me don't admit they're lost. They just keep moving until something feels less empty. One night, in the middle of a snowstorm, I saw a small figure in the snow. No hat, coat dragging from one shoulder. I pulled her onto my horse, wrapped my coat around her, and set up a campfire by the riverbank. She barely spoke, voice ragged, shaking. I let her sleep, kept watch through the night. At dawn, she was gone, left a single silver button behind. I never saw her face clearly, but I never forgot the feeling being needed by someone trying to escape something bigger than both of us. Was it Lily? Was that night when her story really began? The rumors started up that afternoon. I was in the blacksmith's yard when two ranch hands passed by, talking low. Boss said someone saw her writing again. "That ain't good," one muttered. "Writing what?" the other asked. "Letters to him, to the one she lost that winter." The word lost sat in my gut like iron. I'd lived long enough to know losing someone didn't always mean death. Sometimes it was just distance, forced silence, a memory Clay would rather erase barefoot than face eye to eye. Clay had begun showing his own version of the truth, louder each day. "Lily's fragile," he told people. "She ain't well. Went off without sense. We had to bring her back and keep her safe. There are men who'd take advantage. Men like him." He pointed right at me once during a crowded moment in the saloon, but as he talked, I noticed his hand trembled just a bit. His voice cracked once, like even he knew the lie had started to turn against him. Next morning, I stepped to the window and saw Lily again through the distance, standing by the fence line, face turned toward the horizon. The wind tugged her hair free. Her hand lifted slowly, and she touched a silver button pinned to her sleeve. My breath caught. That was my button. My voice felt trapped in my chest, just like hers. Something broke open inside me. Then a memory, a truth, a painful flicker of being the forgotten protector. I'd carried her through a storm once, and now she was calling me again through shadows, through silence, through a note with 8 words. "Thank you, I know who you are." And I whispered back into the empty room, "So do I." But truth has sharp edges, and this one was about to cut deep. The question wasn't who Lily was. It was what Clay would do when he realized someone else knew it too. The saloon was crowded that night, laughter, cards slapping tables, whiskey splashing into glasses. I walked in quietly, the way I always did, keeping my back to the wall. But it didn't take long before Clay McAllister made sure every eye was watching. He stood up from his chair at the bar, hat tipped just enough to see the sneer under his mustache. "Look what the dust blew back," he said loud. "Luke Lane, the stranger nobody asked for." The room went silent, piece by piece. I stayed where I was, hands at my sides. Clay walked over slowly, boots echoing like hammer strikes. "I told you once, boy, you don't belong here. This town ain't for wanderers." I didn't speak. He circled me like a vulture. No family, no land, no purpose. Only ghosts follow a man like you. The words cut sharp, but I'd been scarred deeper. A hush fell thick. He wanted a reaction, fists, a gun, anything that'd justify his hatred. But I just stared at him. "You're right," I said quietly. "I ain't got what you've got." Then, with a voice steady as the wind, "But what you have, you're losing, piece by piece." A few folks gasped. Clay's eyes flared, but I didn't let them pin me. I walked out boots slow, spine iron. My heart thudded hard, not from shame, but from restraint. In that moment, I saw myself reflected in the eyes of every man and woman who's ever been told they didn't belong, that they weren't enough, and I walked through that door with every one of them in me. That night, under a bruised sky, I took to the ridge overlooking the ranch. Something in my gut pulled me back. And there she was, Lily, riding alone under the moonlight. No guards, no Clay. Why was she out this late? Something moved behind the barn, a flicker of shadow not her own. I narrowed my eyes. The figure slipped behind the horses. A rustle, a glint of metal. I didn't hesitate. I slid down the ridge, boots barely making a sound. No time for fear. No time to wonder who watched from the dark. Only one thought: she is in danger. Lily dismounted by the oak tree, touching its trunk gently. I stepped behind a haystack just as the figure emerged, a man with a bandana over his face, moving fast toward her. She didn't see him. My hand reached for my revolver. I stepped into moonlight, voice low but steady. "Don't take another step." The man froze, shoulders stiff, hand near his belt. Lily turned sharply, rifle half raised. But the intruder bolted, running off into the dark behind the corral. I didn't chase. It wasn't time for shadows to die. It was time for truths to surface. Lily's eyes locked onto mine, breath uneven. "Why are you here?" "Same reason I was last night," I said. "Because someone should be." A pause, a stillness like the world had stopped breathing. "I didn't ask you to follow me," she said softly, "but I'm glad you did." Behind her, in the barn's lantern glow, I could see Clay's men moving. They hadn't noticed the threat. They weren't watching her. But I was. And a new certainty settled in my chest. I didn't belong here to Clay. But I sure as hell belonged here to her. And I wasn't leaving until she was safe, even if it meant walking through hell to get there. The wind shifted. Somewhere behind us, a barn door creaked open. Lily's eyes widened. She wasn't alone, but neither was I. And something was closing in. The first crack of thunder broke open the night, like a warning shot from heaven. Black clouds rolled in from the west, devouring the moon. The prairie wind turned savage, bending the fences like they were begging to snap. Somewhere between the shifting shadows and the mounting tension, I knew the storm wasn't just weather. It was a reckoning. I slipped toward the McAllister ranch, rain beginning to spit. The barn stood open, lantern flickering against the wooden beams. Inside, I found Lily, sitting in the hayloft, knees pulled to her chest, coat draped over her shoulders. She looked small, not in body, but in spirit, like the world had clipped her more times than most could survive. I didn't startle her. She must have known I'd come. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered without turning. "If he finds you." "I don't care," I said. It was the truth. The storm roared, wind howled through the boards. Lily's lip trembled as she finally faced me. "I did marry," she said quietly. My breath stopped cold. Last winter, in secret. His name was Caleb. Her fingers fiddled with the silver button on her sleeve, the one I recognized. He promised we'd leave. I ran from this place, from my father. We hid for 2 days. She swallowed, voice shaking. But Clay found us. Told me Caleb was gone, rode off, left me. He dragged me back, locked me away. Emotion crashed through her words like lightning splitting timber. Her voice broke with the weight of it. There was snow on my dress when I woke in my old room. I thought he was dead. I thought... She choked. Clay said no one would ever want me again. Said only he could protect me. Her whole story poured out, storm mixing with sobs. I felt the pain in every shudder of her breath, the way damage hides under bone. How a father's love can turn into chains. What I didn't say was this. I was there that winter. I was the one who carried her from the riverbank, the one who sheltered her by the fire. I tried to speak, but the words clung to my throat like ghosts. So instead, I stepped closer, climbed into the loft quietly, and laid a hand over hers. "You did run," I said, voice thick. "And you did fight, and you're still here." She leaned her forehead against mine, whispering like a prayer. "I don't know who to trust." "I've always been where you needed me," I murmured. She didn't know the full truth yet, but she felt it. Her tears warmed my thumb as I brushed them away. The barn rattled under thunder's weight. Rain hammered the roof. It felt like the storm was fighting to get in. Lightning flashed. In its glow, I saw her. The fire in her eyes was returning, and I felt it in my gut. We weren't just riding into a storm. We were becoming it. Just then, a crash near the barn doors. The hinges shook. Clay's shadow loomed in the lightning. He'd heard enough. "Boy," his voice boomed, loaded with gunpowder and fury. "Step away from my daughter." Lily's breath hitched, but she didn't look afraid anymore. She looked ready. If you felt her pain, ride with us in true Western stories where every tale finds its voice, no matter how long it's been silenced. Clay charged into the barn like a bull through broken fencing, his shadow swallowing the lantern light. Before I could rise, his fist landed hard, cracked the side of my jaw. I hit the floor, straw rising like dust around me. But I stood, faster than he expected. "Get your hands off her," I growled, but he was already swinging again. His boot connected this time, a stomp that sent me to the edge of the loft. Lily screamed fierce, raw, full of years of silence breaking loose. "Stop," she cried, grabbing the rail. But Clay was lost to fury. "You think you can take her from me?" he snarled, grabbing me by the collar and slamming me against a beam. "That boy you call husband, he's nothing but a lying, thieving coward. He left you to freeze, Lily." "That's not true," she cried, trying to climb down. Clay backhanded her. Not hard, but enough. Enough for her breath to break. Enough for the world to go still. My vision blurred. Rage filled the emptiness. Pain carved out. "Fight me, boy," he barked, "or stay in the dirt where you belong." He shoved me again, and I didn't resist. Not this time. I let the fall take me. 15 feet down into wet soil outside, ribs cracking on impact. Rain made mud of blood. The sky erupted above me in thunderous fury. Clay came down the ladder, dragging Lily by the arm. She fought, screamed. He didn't let go. "You don't own me," she yelled, voice ragged. "Don't I?" he snapped. "I built this ranch. I raised you from dirt." He yanked her forward, his boots splashing beside my broken body. I lifted my face from the mud, grit in my teeth, blood in my eyes. "One day," I spat, "she'll walk away, and you'll have nothing left but this soil." Clay leaned over me, face inches from mine. "You'll be dead long before that day comes, boy." He left me there, bleeding, broken, forgotten in the storm. Lily's scream echoed off the lightning, then faded. Their shadows disappeared into the house. I don't know if I passed out. I just remember the mud, how it swallowed everything, how I didn't move, couldn't. Like many of us, I was left broken by someone who feared my strength before I ever had the chance to use it. Hours later, I woke to lantern light. A gentle hand pressed against my shoulder. "You're breathing," a soft voice said. "That's good. Means I can help." It was Mrs. Harding, the widow who lived just past the ridge. She'd found me, half dead in the mud. She carried me inside, cleaned the cuts, wrapped my ribs firm. "You've got a fight that ain't done yet, son," she said quietly. For days, I healed in her attic room, quiet, staring at a simple wooden ceiling while rain tapped like restless fingers. But each night I heard something outside, footsteps, voices, someone searching. Not Clay, someone else. Once I swore I heard a familiar voicemail, steady but cold as the winter I remembered too well. "He's still alive," the voice murmured. My breath froze. Caleb. Lily's husband wasn't dead, and maybe he wasn't gone. And if he was back, a storm far greater than Clay McAllister was preparing to break across this prairie. I pushed myself up through the pain bones still cracking and whispered into the silent room, "I'm not done yet either." It took a full week before I could ride again, ribs tight with pain, but purpose lighting every step. Mrs. Harding, bless her soul, didn't ask where I was going. She simply handed me a small bundle of food and pressed an old pistol into my hand. "Some truths," she said, "ain't written in ink, they're carved in scars. Find him." And I did. I followed the whispers, the ones that spoke about a young ranch hand who vanished after winter, the one Clay called a liar, thief, coward, Caleb, Lily's husband. The trail led north past dried riverbeds and abandoned mining camps. I found him at an old shepherd's cabin, chopping wood with wild eyes and a beard gone rough and untamed. He stared at me as I rode up, hand instantly on his knife. "Who the hell are you?" "Someone who knows where she is," I said quietly. That stopped him. The blade lowered a little. His eyes flickered with something sharp like hope fighting with hate. "Lily," he breathed. She's alive." "She is," I said. "But Clay's been lying to her. To everyone." I slid off my horse. "He told her you ran. Left her in the cold after the wedding." Caleb swore under his breath a broken sound. Whole years of rage collapsing in one breath. "He said the same about her," he spat. "Told me she'd regretted it. Said she wanted to come back, that she never loved me." His voice cracked as he leaned against the cabin post. "That wasn't true?" "No," I said. "She's wearing your button, still." A long silence. Then his fist clenched, jaw trembling. He forced her back. "He made me look like a traitor to her, to everyone." "I know." I paused, stepping closer, speaking slow. "But hate won't save her." "Why do you care?" he snarled. Because I'd watched Lily fight through silence. Because I'd been there in that winter storm. Because I'd carried pieces of both their pain inside me, like a secret too hot to hold. "I care," I said quietly, "because someone fought for me once, and I didn't think I deserved it either." I looked him dead in the eyes. "She still loves you, and she's still trapped, so if you want to save her, now's the time." Caleb's face twisted, torn between fury and love. He stepped away, kicked at the dirt, cursed at the sky. Then he bowed his head. "I swore I'd come back with fire," he confessed. "Burn that ranch down if I had to." "You will," I said, "but not alone." Something changed in a snap, like dried twigs in a fire starting to glow. Caleb looked up, grim resolve in his voice. "When?" "When the storm breaks again." I mounted my horse. "I'll ride at dawn. You follow. No heroics. No killing unless we need to." As I turned to leave, he called out, "Lane." I reined in, glanced back. "Thank you," he said, almost shamefully. "They damn near broke me this year." I tipped my hat. "They tried that with me, too." He smiled, small, sharp. "Then let's give 'em hell." I rode through the growing dusk, heart burning with purpose not my own, but theirs. Two people pulled apart by lies. Two souls still bound by a vow, carved into winter. And out there, somewhere behind the ranch walls, one girl watched the horizon, still waiting for a voice to answer her silence. We were coming. She just didn't know it yet. And neither did Clay McAllister, but the prairie always pays its debts. We rode in at dawn, me and Caleb. The sky was bruised purple, clouds parting like curtains on the last act of a play we all knew had been building toward blood. McAllister Ranch stood quiet under the morning light, but I could feel the tension in the air like an itch under my skin. Clay's men were already gathering rifles at their sides, eyes narrowing as we approached the gate. "Ranch is closed to strangers today," one muttered, hand on his gun. "I ain't a stranger," Caleb said, voice carrying across the yard. Heads turned. A murmur rippled, and from the porch, Clay McAllister froze where he stood. His face hardened as he saw Caleb alive, standing, back for vengeance. "I told you to vanish," Clay growled, hand moving toward the rifle resting against the railing. "And you told her I abandoned her," Caleb replied. "Seems we both know that ain't true." Clay tightened, men drew closer. And then the barn doors swung open. Lily walked out like a storm, sunlight glinting off the barrel of the pistol she held at her side. Her boots crushed gravel with every step. The silence grew thick, charged with 1,000 held breaths. "I told you," she said, voice sharp as spurs. "I'm not his to guard." Clay stepped forward, rifle clutched. "Lily?" "No," she snapped. Then louder, "Caleb and I married last winter, and you ripped us apart." Gasps. Someone cursed under their breath. Caleb's knuckles went white, but he stayed still. Lily's voice shook only once as she turned to the small crowd of ranch hands and neighbors. "He made us both believe the other had abandoned us, lied to isolate me, to control me." Her words cut through the yard like a whip. "But I won't live in the cage he built anymore." Clay laughed low, dangerous. "You think anyone's going to listen to you? You're just a confused girl?" "That girl is holding a gun," Caleb muttered. "And she was raised now, steady, aimed directly at her father." Clay's jaw tightened. "You won't shoot me." "Maybe not," Lily whispered. "But I won't let you shoot anyone else for loving me." She stepped forward, hand steady. I stood behind her, silent, hand near my holster, eyes locked on Clay. My silence was steel. I didn't need to shout. Everything I'd done had led to this one moment, standing at her back, unshakable. "You think you're a savior," Clay sneered. "You think this boy at your back wants anything more than to play hero?" My pulse didn't waver. I met his gaze. "I'm just here to stand where she needs me." Clay shifted just enough for the rifle to rise. "Lily," I shouted. She didn't flinch. "I already married him last winter," she said, voice ringing through the ranch with the weight of a gavel. "And nothing you do will change that." The words hit like bullets. Clay's grip trembled. His eyes flickered for a moment. The mask cracked. This was the girl he raised, the woman he tried to break, and he was losing her. "No," he whispered. A shot rang out. Dust kicked up at Clay's feet. Lily had fired. Warning, not blood. "Put it down," she ordered, not as a girl, not as a daughter, but as a woman choosing her own freedom. Clay's face twisted, not in anger this time, in defeat. He let the rifle fall. No one moved. No one dared. The storm had broken, and now the prairie was waiting to see what came after. For a long, endless heartbeat, no one moved. Clay's rifle lay half buried in the dirt. His fingers twitched. His breath shook. Behind him, the ranch hands shifted uneasily, the kind of men who'd fought for him out of fear, not loyalty. The moment Lily fired that warning shot, the silence stopped being his to command. Caleb stepped forward, voice low but steady. "Mr. McAllister, father-in-law or not, you've got to answer for what you did." Clay's eye twitched a scrap of rage, a shred of pride. He looked at Lily, then Caleb, then at me. The years of power he clutched had fallen to the dust at his boots. He spat into the dirt, but made no move for the rifle. Sheriff Clanton walked up slow from the road, hand on his holster. "I heard the shot," he grunted. He looked at Lily, then Clay. "What's it gonna be, old man?" Clay didn't argue, didn't beg. He just stood there, wind washing over his face as the world he built unraveled. The sheriff stepped behind him, slapped iron cuffs around his wrists. "For attempted murder, coercion, and false imprisonment," Clanton declared. "You'll get your day in court, but I'd reckon your daughter just said every word that needed saying." Clay was marched down the trail. Not a man stepped forward to help him. Caleb's shoulders felt years of tension dissolving. He walked to Lily, eyes full of wonder and pain. "You still want me?" he asked, voice cracking. She smiled small, tired, true. "I never stopped." The crowd of ranch hands parted. Even the horses stood still. The prairie hushed. In the middle of that broken yard, in front of God and the wind, Lily McAllister and Caleb Benson stood an arm in arm. "We already said the words once," Lily whispered, "but I'd like to say 'em again without chains around my wrists." Caleb nodded, brushing his thumb over the silver button on her sleeve. "As long as it's your voice, not one forced on you." Their vows were quiet, gentle, real stitched together from the scraps of a winter they both survived. No preacher, no church, just sky and earth and second chances. I stood off to the side, hands in my pockets, watching. A part of me ached because I knew what it meant to be almost loved, to be a protector, not the one protected, but another part deeper, steadier was still, at peace. When the vows were done, Lily turned toward me. One look, a silent thank you. I tipped my hat. That was all she needed. The ceremony ended. Guests began to scatter. The prairie wind picked up, carrying laughter and hope across the dry grass. I saddled my horse. Caleb walked over. I don't know how to repay you, Lane, he said. You don't owe me a thing, I replied. Just love her right. That's all the payment I need. He nodded, eyes burning with promise, and I believed him. Lily stepped beside him and held Caleb's arm. She looked at me one last time, not with longing, but with gratitude, sparkling like dawn on the frost. You were there when I couldn't speak, she said softly. Thanks for listening, even when no one believed. I smiled, eyes on the horizon. Some fights ain't about blood, I said quietly. They're about freedom. Then I rode. No farewell, just the sound of hooves on soil that had seen too many lies, and now at last one truth. My head held high, my heart not bitter, not broken, just whole enough to keep going. This was one of many true Western stories. If it stirred your heart, saddle up with us for the next ride where every silence is heard and every storm finds its peace